Seen here in a mugshot from last year, we understand has turned himself in as of today. Alexis Wainwright is updating you on the investigation.
The suspect surrendered here at the Dallas County Jail. I did reach out to his attorney, who declined to comment. I spoke with a family member of the victim who says they're grateful someone is behind bars, but it doesn't take away from their pain. This is an arrest photo from 2021 of Yaqub Salik Talim when he was booked for unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon and drug charges. Talim is the brother of former NFL player Aqib Talim. He is accused of shooting and killing coach Mike Hickman during a 9-and-under football league game Saturday. This cell phone video shot by someone who witnessed the violence surfaced on social media showing a fight, and then you hear shots go off.
Shocking for the fight, no, but shooting, yes, that was too extreme. I wasn't expecting that.
Police say Talim started shooting after an argument turned into a fight between the opposing coaches and officiating crews.
It took away a great person that was wanting to help the community and better us as a person.
Hickman's family released this statement saying, quote, Mike was an amazing husband, son, father, grandfather, brother, friend, and coach. Our family is grieving. Right now, we don't see an end to our grief, but what I know for sure is we will find a way to move forward. We don't have a choice. We miss him immensely. We always will. We will love him forever. According to court records, Talim has been arrested in the past on several charges, from assault with a deadly weapon to child criminal negligence. In 2017, Talim was arrested in Dallas County for allegedly knocking out a pregnant racetrack employee after the two got into an argument over cigars. In Dallas, Alexis Wainwright, CBS 11 News.
Hey, everyone, welcome everybody to another episode of You and the Law Podcast Show. We've got another exciting topic to talk about today, and we've got several guests that's going to be joining us on the podcast. So I need to introduce myself. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, Virgil Green, and the dude over there with the blue cap on, don't have on the right T-shirt, goes by the name of Chief Swaggy One.
You know what, man? I'm going to just say, because we have guests on, I'm going to say, hello, my esteemed co-host. How are you? And it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you, brother.
Hey.
At least I know when we got guests on that you know how to act professional.
Well, man, I tell you, all seriousness, man, I want to send out condolences to the Hickman family. His sister, we used to work together when I was in Lancaster, and that family has suffered quite a few tragedies. Just 2 years ago, a sister was murdered, and now a brother, she was murdered, senseless murder, and now the brother. So I want to extend condolences to the family, and it's sad, man. It is sad at a youth football game, and Virgil, you and I talked, so that's why I'm so grateful that we just came up with this topic, and we've got two amazing experts, official people who officiated these games. Actually, one of them owned a Little League baseball team, and he can explain more about that, Mr. Mark Edwards. But so I just wanted to say thank you all for coming up, and Virgil, go ahead and do your usual. It's taking over.
No, man, I'm not taking over, but yeah, I mean, it was really important, when we talked about what our next topic was going to be. And after seeing that incident that took place in Lancaster, an area that you're from, and the violence with it, and the fact that somebody lost their life because of some officiating. And this just isn't with that incident that took place there in Lancaster, but many others. And so it's good to have on two experts who are dealing with youth athletics. Mark, you're in the Dallas DFW area, and I think, or Ron, you're in the DFW area, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's
And
correct.
Mark, you're in the Central Arkansas area.
Right.
Okay. All right. And so, guys, it was just really important to have this conversation with our listeners about the violence, the parental rage and violence in youth sports. And that's what our podcast topic tonight is about. And you guys bring a wealth of knowledge to this topic. So, and just with that video that we saw, that's something that's played out pretty much almost every weekend across the United States between parents, coaches, and referees.
So I'm not sure if you want me to jump in. Yes, and
Yeah,
you're
go
definitely
ahead.
correct. Yeah, you're definitely correct on that. Well, in the Dallas area, you have two different elements. Saw in the clip was what Pee Wee Little League, or what the officiating association called recreational sports for youth sports, and it's a little different than when you have a school sanctioned referee crew. There, you still have the same challenges, but that incident was definitely one of the youth recreation sports where most of the time you have the coaches right there and the fans right there with no boundary lines and anything of that nature.
Yeah, and I can say that as an umpire at Little League baseball games, I mean, the fans go back and forth, the coaches argue with you, and sometimes I have to tell them, Coach, they're 10, they're 11, they're not going to the majors tomorrow, man. It's gone, let it go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey guys, before we get too far into the podcast show, why don't you share with us and our listeners, a little bit about yourselves, your background, and what you guys are doing today.
Always good. Always let the little brother go first. So you go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, you talking to Virgil, right?
Yeah. So
I'm trying to get my camera working. That's all.
So Ron, go.
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
I'll go first. Well, being of the esteemed organization, the Five Days with Brother Keith Humphrey, who helped make me. I'm a acquisition man for a company called Attica. I've been here for a short time, a couple of years. I left IBM after 20-something years in the same position, and my officiating background goes back to the Dallas Football Officiating Association, where I did that for about 15, 20 years. And what happens with that situation, you have people that are in there that get these contracts with the Little League sports, and they'll ask some of the referees to come in and coach on Saturdays for the Little League games, and some of us volunteer to do that on this basis. So that's kind of my background when it comes to youth sports and where I'm from.
Okay. All right. Well, we got Mark up. So Mark, tell us about yourself, sir.
About 5 years. I coach my son at a park, what we call league ball, for a while, and then I did a little travel ball coaching, and moved from there to becoming just strictly umpire. It was a lot easier to deal with. Parents can be difficult at times, so that's my background in youth sports. Of course, right now, working with the police department here in Little Rock, which is how I know, what is it, Big Brother Keith Humphrey? What is it? Blue Thunder? What?
Well, Mark, he's got many aliases, brother.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to be a part of the show, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, guys. Well, and as more people jump on the podcast show, we tonight we're talking about the rage and violence in youth sports, and it's a topic that needs to be talked about. How do parents control their rage? How do coaches control their conflicts with referees? And the sad thing about all this, guys, as you know, all this is happening in front of a lot of young children, and so the question for you two, what does that do for these 8, 9, 10-year-old young men who are out trying to have fun, but you got parents who are, whether it be at a football game, a basketball game, or a soccer game, who get into it with each other and ultimately get into it with the officials?
Well, some of the training that they teach us in the Officiating Association, you don't go back and forth with the fans, especially, or the coaches. The coach have a legitimate question, of course, they ask you to go ahead and address it. But again, that's where you kind of get the split between what I'm going to call recreational youth sports and the school sanctioned sports. The coaches do the fans, for example, in a regulated ISD game, I'm gonna call it. The fans are back in the stands where they're not right up on the referees. Most of the time in the Little League game, you got the fans, the coaches, fans, right there behind your back. So, we are trained to not even engage. When you start engaging the fans, that kind of escalates the situation. Not to the magnitude of you guys being in the, being police officers or in the law enforcement. It's kind of like we're the law enforcement for the game ourselves. So actually, we're supposed to de-escalate in this situation there. So they tell us not even to, and with coaches, if they have a legitimate question, one of the things I would say at a Little League game, are you asking me a question about one of the rules? And if they keep going to, well, he hit my son in the back, well, what rule you think? You limit your conversation and continue to watch the game.
Yeah, I would echo that. You can't really get involved with defending things with parents. You have to keep the game moving and try to minimize as much communication with, especially with the fans, because they're the ones that kind of get everything going.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask y'all a question real quick, Mark and Rania? Do you all think sometimes that these parents are trying to live through these kids? Because I see sometimes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I see kids. I had a grandson that played Little League football, man, and these coaches, man, the things and the way they talk to these kids, and I'm talking 7 and 8 year old kids. And the way they talk to them, and I understand trying to get the edge of competition, helping them understand competition and things like that, but just they jump up and down, they grab these kids. Do you think that sometimes sets the tone based on the fact that they're trying to get these kids? Because a lot of them are I shouldn't say a lot. There are many of these coaches that have played college ball, and maybe some that have even played in the league, whether it's the Canadian League, USFL, or whatever. But it seems like those are the ones that are just really, really more intense, and I would say that could easily initiate some of the heat out on the field.
And I would definitely agree with that. And I think they probably experienced that when they were playing and think this is the way to coach a kid. And the kids today coach the way we were coached. We played sports. It's one of the things that they do not. With the way we were coached back in the day, those that played sports, you can't coach the kids like that these days. So a lot of them do try to coach them, and they're saying, I'm gonna use football because of the clip. I did basketball as well. They see NBA, NFL in an 8-year-old kid instead of teaching the kid fundamentals.
Yeah.
I would tell a coach, go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, sir. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would, with a coach, for example, I would tell them, hey, I'll let you coach your kid if you let me officiate. That's one of the statements. I'm not going to coach your kid on what he did wrong on the play. Respect me to let me officiate the game. You coach kid, I'll officiate the game, and we'll come to a happy medium. And that'll probably be the furthest I will go with the coach. And then to get out of hand, I'll just start using the flag. And eventually they'll catch the hint.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my plate visits, I got this simple saying. I walk up when the coaches get there, I let them know today I'm sensitive. So this is your warning. I'm not going to tell you again during the game. When you mouth back to me, that's it. I'm tossing you. So if you want to watch from the seats or you want to watch from the parking lot, start talking, because I'm not going to coach your kids and you're not going to make my calls.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, God, and I saw this when just even in, YMCA sports, when my kids were growing up, I coached flag football and basketball at the YMCA. And just to hear the parents' attitude of, getting on to their kids. And then, if a referee makes a bad call, he makes a bad call. But just to see the anger in some of these parents, and even growing up playing sports, but it has become much more violent. Now you've got parents taking weapons to these sporting events, whether it's a soccer game. And one thing, this is not just a problem. It's not just a problem in the Black community. This is a problem with every race. This is a Black problem. This is a white problem. I think the only race that I haven't seen any violence in sports is out of our Asian population. But for whatever reason, and let me ask you this, Keith, you asked the question: are these parents trying to live their life through their kids and trying to motivate them because they see themselves through them kids, through their children? But at what point is there some responsibility on the parents? Because I'm going to ask this question, guys. Should parents exhibit that? Should they be totally banned from participating in these events? At the end of the day, it hurts the kids because the parents is the one. But when you got parents who every weekend show up and they're getting into it with the coaches, getting into it with the officials, and getting into it with the coaches because, well, you didn't play my son long enough. And so now you've got that confrontation.
Well, I'll say this. I don't know, I think, Ronnie, you do football. I'll say this, in baseball, I want the fans to be a part of it, but because it's tournament ball, so you're playing Saturdays and Sundays, if I kick you out Saturday, you don't come back Sunday.
Okay.
So I don't know how they do it, in that situation, but I have the right to determine whether or not it was worth Sunday suspension completely or not. And so most of the time, if I got to tell you to leave, then yeah, you probably won't be back tomorrow.
And in football and the best, I taught school right out of college. So I did teach school and was an athletic director. One of the things I did was I had a parent code of conduct that they signed with a list of rules and regulations, even to the coaches. I tell the parent, God, let me handle the coaches. Let me handle the referees. I would have meetings, throughout the year for school. And I suggest that even in Little League football, have a parents meeting, have a parents code of conduct for this behavior. This will have your kid suspended from the team. You're hurting your kid for various behaviors, and they should understand that from the very beginning. And I would invite some of the, if I knew some of the referees, I would invite them to come to my parents' meetings as well. And as a coach, I would tell the parents, I have a 24-hour rule when I was coaching. I have a 24-hour rule. I don't want to talk about this if I lose. I don't want to talk about the game or anything happening in the game until after 24 hours. Let everybody calm down, because I don't want to say something out of hand and have you say to my hand right after, especially after a loss. I'll give you 24 hours, and then we can discuss anything after that.
So true.
That's an amazing rule, man. And both of you guys are very, to the audience, I know these guys are very calm, very professional, and and that's why one of the reasons I wanted them on. We asked them to come on the show, because they've got all these years of experience. But have you all seen it when you first got into officiating? Was it this bad? Has it always been this bad? Are we missing something, or is this something that's gotten gradually worse over the last 10 years.
Oh, it's always been this bad.
Yeah, I'm with Mark. Yeah.
It's always been this way. It's that competitive. You get it as an official, you get it, but at the same time, we're trying to make the correct calls. We have no skin in the game. So yeah, it's always been this competitive. I had a coach friend of mine go viral behind the plate last year. Just the coach came up, they get they want to push you and tell you don't know what you're doing. So yes, 100%. It's always been there since I've been there.
Yeah. And Virgil, what you both said, you asked about demographics. Out of my whole officiating time, the only time, the worst I've ever seen, and Keith know these two schools, it was two big time esteemed private schools playing each other. Keith, it was First Baptist Academy and playing each other. That was the most, where we had parents come out of the stands down to and was getting ready to assault one of the judges. And that was probably, and these are two big time esteemed private schools, so you can't say it's in the city at all. It's across the board.
Yeah. And let me say this: so in travel baseball, you have levels of baseball. Sometimes you get an assignment, you might do 12 AA, you might do 12 AAA, or 12 major. Whatever the age, they have a AA, AAA, and a major. And I can tell you, the worst games to do are the majors because the kids are so good. They rarely make mistakes, but when they make mistakes, the coaches yell at them, fans yell at, parents yell at them. I mean, sometimes you come in and I say, look, if I'm doing majors or AAA, yeah, I'm good. I'm not doing that this week. Just don't want the headache.
Yeah.
Right.
But
you know what, Virgil? One of the things we're forgetting, and Rania know us both being from the Dallas area, Aqib Talib is not a stranger to trouble, and his brother's not a stranger to trouble.
Yep.
And so, it's sort of like this. Being in law enforcement, what do we tell people? You go to rob a bank and you have a gun. There is that probability you're going to use it. You're not carrying that gun for no reason. You're carrying it looking to, if someone doesn't comply with what you're asking them, you're probably going to use it. You bring a gun to a little league school, which is already against the law to have a gun in city parks.
Yeah.
And so you bring a gun to a school, to a little league game, and you use it. And I think the thing that just gets me is, do you get to the point that you are so out of it, that you've lost it to the point that do you not realize that these are kids? Do you not realize that this man's little boy is there, which I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. But this man's little boy saw his daddy die right in front of him in a football game because a former NFL All-Pro, okay? We're not talking about a one-hit wonder. We're not talking about somebody who walked out, who was a free agent and who played 1 year. We're talking about a guy who played 11 years in the league that has been, and you ought to know better. And so my thing is, Rania and Mark, what was this guy thinking? I mean, where does common sense come in?
What is what my dad would always say, when I would say, Dad, there ought to be common sense. My dad would say, son, common. So, they have been bad actors in the Dallas area for a while. Everybody know about those two, and the thug mentality that they display, that they want to display. So I don't know what he was thinking. It's for the son, every kid that was there, because if you see, it's another video I saw where right before the shooting, I saw a little kid with a uniform on the field close to where they were, and that was a sad situation. That's all I can say about that.
Well, and I have to say, I think, this wasn't the first time something like this here happened. And apparently for him to go to the game with a weapon, it wasn't the first time he went to a game on a Saturday with a gun. And the fact that somebody probably knew something, but the fact that who his name and people didn't want to say anything to him. I believe this could have been prevented if people would have taken some steps to say, listen, probably a week or 2 weeks ago, you came and you acted, no, man, you don't need to be here today.
I think if they would have told him that, they would have acted a bigger fool. I don't think there was anything that could have happened that day that would have
changed anything.
Well, I'm not saying that with the homicide, we'll never know about that. But I think if you would have tried to tell them, hey man, you can't come out here, I think they would have acted a bigger fool. Now let me just ask this question to Ronnie and Mark. So as a parent, I know that Talib has a reputation. I've seen him on the field. I've seen him coach my kid, and I've seen him be hot-tempered. Why would you allow this man, or why would you allow your child to be a part of this man's team? Mark, same thing. When you know that there's a coach or an organization that has a reputation of being a hothead and has displayed this over and over and over again, why would a parent allow their kids to play for this person? Mark, we lost you.
Well, I'll jump in. I think it's two things, Keith. I think the first thing was it's Aqib Talib, that name. Oh, my kid playing for an NFL player. Such as, when and that's number one. I think number two was that some of the parents feel like the way they coach those kids is the way coaches coach. And it took me as a young coach coming out, learning. And after, I'm going to tell you that what changed me when I coached, Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy came to one of our clinics and spoke. And Tony Dungy basically said, if I have to yell and scream and holler, the kid don't need to be on the field or on the team. And that kind of clicked to me. So that changed my whole mentality of how to coach and how coaches should operate. Tony Dungy wasn't a hoop and hollering coach, as you know. Yeah. So I think those two factors came in. He was an NFL player, and some parents think, okay, my son, that's the way to coach him, is to get them to make it to the NFL or the next level.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this because, our friend over there, the swag one, he gives me a hard time about, I came from Hobbs, New Mexico, and I played football. But so as a going into high school, I was going to play on the varsity team, and the coach then had growing up, you knew this guy. His name was Coach Cromartie. Everybody knew he was just one of them old-time white coaches, very aggressive, all up in your face. So spring training was going on, and so he grabbed me by my helmet, and he kept, doing this here. Green, you gonna do this, and Green. I'm like, no. So, my father worked in the schools, grandfather worked in the school system, and I went back and I said, I'm gonna sit out, I'm not gonna play. So a good friend of ours was on the school board, and I talked to him, and Coach Cromartie came to the house and was kind of like, hey, what does it take to get you to come back? I'm like, I'm not gonna play until you're not the coach. And all of my friends was like, oh man, that's wrong. Virgil, you wrong. Well, the father, at the end of that football season, they got rid of him, and we got a coach out of Amarillo, Texas, Coach James, and I played the following year. But, I'm just not, that whole back then, I grew up around Odessa Permian, and you guys, Ron, coming from Texas, how Odessa Permian football was back then. It was one of the toughest football programs in West Texas. So you just had coaches like that who their attitude was they were going to make you the player that they wanted you to be.
You know what? I will say this also, man, but you got to understand that time was different. And sometimes coaches felt, okay, so when you were an athlete and you weren't doing what you were supposed to in class, who did they go get? Who were you afraid of?
The head coach.
Who were you afraid of?
Yeah, you got the coach.
You were afraid of the coach. And you have parents today, you have single moms that believe and they're looking for help, and especially when they have young boys, they're looking for that help to put that level of so the kids
fear
can
and respect,
or whatever like that. I have no problem with that, but I have a problem with our coaches who, like you said, I think Mark said it earlier. Well, both of you guys said it. Some of the coaches come out there ready to fight. you know, coaches come out there ready to fight. Parents come out there ready to fight. You know, and you think about this, even in a high school game, like Ron, you said, they're separated. They're in the stands. You got a fence around it. But some of the things that parents say then, and then now, you know, people go crazy about their babies. And so, you know, it's just amazing that, man, you know, the sport that's for kids, that we hope that we're teaching them, you know, team effort and discipline and stuff. You know, the wrong, the people who are supposed to be teaching them are the ones that are teaching them the bad habits or displaying the bad habits.
That's correct. And then that's the difference between when I say Little League and ISD games. If you notice, I'm going to use high school. Most high school football fields are marked with a 3-yard to 5-yard line on the sideline. The coaches can't cross that line. You ever seen them do the sideline warnings or warn the coach? So in those games, you got the 3 to 5 yard. And I was an umpire, so I was in the middle of the field. I had to deal with any of that. But yeah, you have a 3 to 5 yard marker that the coaches and the players got to stand behind. Whereas in the Little League game, the coaches are right there on the sideline, right with you. And so that's a big difference in those two. But yeah, Keith, you are definitely right. You have some of the coaches that are teaching the kids some bad behavior. The kids say, "Oh, coach, act this way. I can disrespect the referee." You remember a couple years ago when you saw a football player run on the field and punch a referee? Did y'all see that video?
Yeah.
So I guarantee and come to find out, and they talked about it in our reference chapter meeting, was this kid had did this a week before without any discipline.
Wow.
And so,
yeah. Well, hey, you know, another question, you know, I want to ask with youth sports, and you guys are seeing this, because I know in Oklahoma, every Saturday you see parents at an intersection.
They don't have real sports in Oklahoma, man. You got to go to Texas. They don't have real sports in Oklahoma or Arkansas. they just don't, man. You already said it was an oxymoron. Real sports in Oklahoma. That's just
Hey man, well you better not. Hey man, how you gonna say that? And you were the former chief in Norman.
It's like this in Oklahoma and Arkansas. You play the last game of the year, and how do you have the last game of the year and the playoffs in the same game?
wow.
Hey man. Hey. Now you know what? Now, you know what, man? How do you say that? And you were the chief in Norman at the not for the University of Oklahoma, but you represented the city of Norman, and you gonna talk, man?
Yeah. Well, Keith, Keith, let me answer that. Look at the Oil who've been winning the Oil Bowl the last few years. They have an Oil Bowl where the Texas high school All-Stars play the Oklahoma All-Stars. It's called the Oil Bowl.
Yeah. And they always.
And we don't even want to talk about Arkansas football because, you know, Mark used to be a sportscaster. We don't even want to talk about Arkansas high school football because, like I said, man, I tell you what, man, between Arkansas and Oklahoma football, you know, that's got to be the most boringest football. They gotta be.
Wow.
Hey.
Real football is in Texas, and you know that.
Hey, you realize if he's saying that since he's retired now. Yeah, this is the retirement Keith Humphrey speaking.
Wow.
But hey, I want to get to this point I was going to make. So every weekend in Oklahoma, you see parents, these coaches standing on intersections collecting money for kids to play, you know, for them to buy equipment and everything. And then you hear, even when you are at an intersection, you hear some of these guys screaming and hollering at kids, go get that money, go get that money. I'm like, you standing on an intersection on a hot day, 100 degrees, got these kids out here panhandling for money. When really, if you want these kids to play and you want to be the coach, you get out there and you get you a sponsor and you collect the money. Don't have these kids out here panhandling for money. Do you guys think? I don't know if that's how it is in Texas or in Arkansas. When I was in Arkansas, I never saw it, but I'm pretty sure it's probably the same way in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yep.
Does that have a small role in this conversation that we're talking about with parental rage and violence in youth sports? The money aspect of it.
I think it does in a fashion, especially with the behavior. The kids are going to emulate. So if they look up to the coach, they're going to emulate the coach in youth sports. So I think it is. It's the way to do that. Some of the coaches don't know how to go solicit donation, how to go get a sponsor. So they know stand on the corner with this and ask for change or whatever, and I give you a bottle of water voluntarily. You can't sell it, but they can give you a bottle of water voluntarily. It does, in my opinion, it does play a factor, because I've heard it too. Man, y'all leave that money here. Y'all leave it here. Y'all gonna be hustling when you go get the kid ran over trying to get the money. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey guys, I want to remind those who are listening to the podcast that tonight's topic is parental rage and violence in youth sports, and we got on two guests, one from the DFW area, one from Central Arkansas, as we talk about, the alarming concerns, which is not new, but is something that continues to get worse. Every time you've got some kind of youth sports that's going on, even in flag football, you see the same thing happening.
I mean, yeah, you said I went to my great nephew's game last year. I hadn't been to a Pee Wee game in a while, but it's like I couldn't sit in the stands with some of the parents the way they were talking and hollering, for everything. The coach, I'm like, are you enjoying the game, or are you watching what the referee's doing on the field? So, yeah. I mean, and I would tell them, look, I don't run touchdowns, I don't kick field goals, I don't tackle, I don't block. So it's the display of the kids are seeing, and I see a question in the chat. When does it stop? That's a great question. Does it stop? I think it started with the coaches and educating the parents on how to behave.
Hey, have either one of you? I gotta ask either one of y'all, and I'll pose this to Mark. Mark, have you been threatened as an official?
I don't know if Mark.
Can't hear you, Mark.
What about you, Ron?
Absolutely, yes. Went to a little town called Ira, Texas. I was the only African American in the whole stadium, and when you had the announcer making racist comments, every time I threw my flag, the announcer was making racist comments. And he said, well, like one of them, I just say one. He said, I bet if I go get that N-word of Washington, we'll get a call. Now this is the PA announcer.
Wow.
Said that. Then I threw another flag, and he said, well, I guess I better go tell my wife to cook that N-word a pot of greens. Yeah, so, wow. And then as the way you go out of the stadium, the fans and the referees go out of the same exit. We didn't have a locker room. So as we were walking coming to the side, the good fellow jumped out of the press box and stopped right in front of me. And my co-officials was horrified, but I was going to protect myself. I'm 6'5", so.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got Ron as a big man, so
I'm 6'5", I mean.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't usually get threatened, mostly because when you're behind the plate, you got all that gear on, and but does it happen? Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And it's a shame that you have to have law enforcement work in some of those games. I've worked Little League, tournaments and stuff, and you got to have armed police officers working those games because it gets out of control. That is, that's just it is what it is. But man, I didn't think we would be talking about somebody getting killed, a coach or someone getting killed at a Little League game. But Virgil, this isn't the first time. If I make no mistake, there's several of these incidents that occur annually throughout the nation, where there's a shooting or a homicide during a youth sports event.
Well, and yeah, you're right, and I think this is probably caught a lot of people's attention, maybe just because of who the person was involved in the shooting. Most times it doesn't even make it may make the local news, but it doesn't make the national news like this here did. And I think people are just looking at just taking their kids out of the sports, because if you can't go to a football game on a Saturday and enjoy your kids or watching somebody else play, and you got to be worried about getting shot, then at what point are decisions made that maybe this isn't the safest thing that should be going on a Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I've recruited a game where a pro football player here was retired at the time, threatening the referees as we were leaving the stadium at halftime. And I'm not gonna call the name, but he was standing on the fence, hooping and hollering the whole game, and then come to halftime, we going out to the locker room. He's standing there. He called us all kinds of names, and I can tell you the name off. And you say, okay, that's that. I could tell. I know who that was. And his son was a running back. His son was a running back on the team at the time. And his son, being an umpire, I spot, so he'll get tackled and put the ball 3 yards further, and I would put it back to the regular spot. And he on the sideline, you have nothing. You cheat my son out of yards. And this is the NFL Hall of Famer, probably.
Wow. So let me ask this question to you, Ron, and then Mark. At what point does these games that are sponsored or fall under the umbrella of some association? When do they say, "Hey, this is enough," and they make decisions to either cancel games or just what kind of punishment is there for the coaches and the parents?
Well, let me say this. I think a lot of that is on the coach that the organization gets. I remember a coach years ago, his motto was, if I got to yell at your kid, I don't need him. And that worked. His kids were able to win tournaments, back-to-back tournaments. I mean, they were really, really good. And a lot of them weren't, the high caliber major players, but they were able to win tournaments. And really, when you're one of these organizations, it's all about the money. They don't care. I mean, we got an organization, and here in Arkansas, you pay $1,200 for your kid to play. As long as you're paying money, they'll deal with you. That's the sad part.
Yeah, well, and that's something I was going to bring up, and you bring up a good point. The financial part of this here, where you got parents who pour this money into these organizations, and they are looked at like, well, hey, we can't punish anybody because that's going to hurt somebody's feelings. So you've got the money part of it that's influencing people not to do things.
It is, man. It's crazy, man. I just think about how these incidents make YouTube and TikTok, and people know there's camera phones out there. I mean, and that's the amazing thing. It's like police body cameras. They're on there. They're on, but you still continue to do the things that you're doing. You don't learn from previous incidents you've been told about. And like you guys said, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, when you think about it, there's nothing you can do. It's very difficult to trespass a parent from a public park. Very difficult. To tell a parent you can't come back to Lancaster Park. Good luck with that. You might be able to get away with it at a high school football stadium. You might be able to get away with that, but you can't do it at a public park because that's tax dollars, and that person's a taxpayer whether they live in that city or not. But can we put an end to this? I mean, is there any way we can make these type of things minimize? Reduce the chance of something like this happening, or do you all foresee this continuing and potentially getting worse in the future?
I don't know about football, but I know for baseball, the game gets so expensive. They're starting to pay for coaches now. So, like I said,
really?
$1,500 a kid. You want 12 kids on your team. They take some of that and pay the coaches a small salary and a stipend.
Wow.
And you as the parent have to pay for, they're playing trips out of town. Some organizations, it's $1,500, and you have to contribute to the tournaments. Tournaments are $400 a pop. So everybody has to put in $25 for, however many tournaments. So it's so expensive that, and not to mention batting practice, you have to have batting lessons, you have to have pitching lessons. All that comes into play, and it's so expensive that parents, in my opinion, if you really, really, really want to fix it, then, cut down on some of those rates. Let other kids who probably couldn't afford it get a chance to play. Because the higher up it gets, the different type of mentality person is bringing their kids, and those people feel a little entitled.
So let me ask you this question while you make that point. Is there less violence when you have parents who are putting that type of money into a sport, or is it less? Is it more violence with parents who don't have the same ability to put that type of money into their kids playing sports?
Well, the people who can't put that money into playing sports, you don't play. You play for one of the smaller organizations. Don't put a lot of emphasis on winning. Your kid probably won't get much out of it, and you probably won't play long because you're not gonna put that kind of money. When I coached, my team I asked for $200 because Torrey Hunter sponsored my teams. So all my baseball uniforms, my baseballs, he used a stipend from his Rawlings account to get me all that, but he wanted the parents to put something into your kids. So if you put $200 in, everything else was given to you. The shoes, we had Derek Jeter brand Jordan cleats. The shoes were sponsored. The clothes were sponsored. All you had to do was pay $200 and show up. And some parents wouldn't even do that. So
and to your question, Virgil, I don't think it make a difference in my opinion. I think it could be a little worse if I'm paying you $1,200. I'm paying my money, so I think it's worse. So I don't think it actually makes a difference. On the say is the coaches having some type of parent code of conduct, having meetings with the parents, explaining consequences, situations, and consequences. And another thing that could probably minimize, I can't say stop it, minimize it, if they can somehow get to a regulated football, I'm going to use football, regulated football stadium instead of a park where they just marking the lines.
Yeah.
And they do push the fans at least back into the stands, and the coach is supposed to stay back behind the lines. That would be my two suggestions for anybody who try to minimize. And of course, we have to lean on you guys and the law enforcement, showing that they see you there, and they see you also.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you have, organizations like the YMCA and other organizations who put on these, athletic events for, whether it be soccer, flag football, or, basketball, those organizations are, nonprofit, how they operate. And they're just trying to give kids who are less fortunate the opportunity to play on a Saturday, to learn how to play football, to learn the basics and move up. But then have these when they move up to the next level, now you've got what you guys are talking about, parents who have to come out of their pocket to pay a fee for the kids to play. Now they got to pay a fee to it's almost kind of like AAU basketball. You know, when our kids were growing up, you know, every weekend you're going to a tournament, and then some coaches saying, hey, by the way, we need $50 from you because we're trying to go to, you know, Kansas City to play in this tournament, or we're trying to go to Dallas and play in the tournament. So, but the kids do get a different type of exposure. But the main thing we're talking about is the violence in youth sports, and how do you remove the violence so the kids can really enjoy going out there playing?
Man, that's a tough question.
That is a tough question.
That's very tough question. And that's why I put it back on the coaches, you know, on the coaches and some type of parent code of conduct and enforcing it. I mean, if don't care if they're running 100 yards every time they touch the ball. If your parents are acting up, you know, unfortunately, you know, your son is going to feel the brunt of your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so. And that's what I, you know, was going to say earlier. If the parents are held to a higher standards, and the coaches or the officials say you remove that parent, and by the way, you're not going to be playing next weekend, and you're a pretty high caliber, you know, young kid playing, you're going to be mad at your daddy or your mama because you can't go out and play next weekend, or there may be some other kind of suspension. But I just don't think we've seen that type of accountability from these different associations to the parents, because then the politics come inside of who's who and who they know.
Yeah.
But did you punish a kid though? But did you punish a kid?
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't have to punish a kid, but I think at some point you got to get the message to the parents.
Man, that sends a wrong message to that kid, man.
Man, wrong message. Yep.
You think so?
Yeah, because he.
I don't agree. I don't think so.
I disagree too. I think if it hit the kid, the parent will hopefully notice. I mean, and again, it's unfortunate for that kid. Very unfortunate. You know that, but again, if you knew this from the very beginning, and you had a parent code of conduct, and the parents knew this from the very beginning, don't just do it arbitrarily. If they know at the very, very onset this could happen, and the parents understand it and sign that code of conduct.
But I agree. I've seen it work that way. The only problem I got with it is, like I said, there are some organizations that's money driven.
Mm-hmm.
Money driven.
See that's where that money comes.
As long as you're paying, I will put up with whatever you want to put up with. You need me to put up with because you're paying.
Yeah. Well, you know what that's called? That's called the Mr. Drysdale effect. You remember Mr. Drysdale, man? Yeah. Baptist couldn't do nothing wrong. Yeah. That's what that is. That's the Mr. Drysdale effect.
Yeah.
That's great. I just say inversion.
Jethro could go out and do whatever he wanted to do.
Whatever he wanted to. You know, you know, Ronnie and Virgil, I get it. I know exactly. I hear what y'all are saying. But man, that's punishing the kid. The parent ain't gonna see it that way. Let me say this. Not all parents are gonna see it that way. To me, you're punishing the kid. As a matter of fact, I think that's gonna piss the parents off even more. Because now you messing with my child. You see, I'm just saying, you got people that think that way. We get it. Everybody on this podcast, we get it. We're sending a message that maybe you understand when your kid is not playing. Maybe you get it. We get that. But you got parents that's gonna heat them up even more.
That's true. But again,
if it heats them up, guess where they're gonna be heated up at? Sitting at home.
At home. Yeah.
I get it. I get it, Virgil. But we talking about in a perfect world. You got people that are dysfunctional, man. And they look for everybody to blame for them not being able to. They look for everybody to blame for them being dysfunctional parents.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why Hart probably wouldn't work as well in baseball, because especially the travel baseball, you only have 10, 11 kids. So you get to a point where a couple of parents act a fool and you take them out, nobody plays. Whole team. Everybody's gonna struggle.
That's gonna be a slug match.
That's where that parent's contract comes into play.
You better have a farm league. You better have a farm league. Have a farm league and talk about off that AAA baseball up. Move it. But I mean, yeah, I definitely see that. I understand that, Keith. But I mean, this could be a bad analogy. When I drove out of town this weekend, I knew when I got on the highway, I can't go 100 in the 75 mile per hour. I knew the expectation before getting on the highway. I equate that as if you set the expectation to the parents from the very beginning, before you pay your $1,500 for your child, we have a code of conduct. Now, and if this code of conduct is broke, here are the consequences. And you sign and agree to it. So,
hey, Ryan,
and you got to make sure the coach ain't a fool.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's the other side of the coin.
Let me ask you this real quick. Is there a background check on coaches? Do they do the is there a association that does background check on coaches?
I want to say no. I want to say most of it's a no. You may have some do, but most of the time I'm gonna say no. These are somebody who sometime they had never played sports, and this is my chance to do it. No, I'm gonna say no. And as my opinion, there may be some. I'm gonna say overall, because it's probably no.
I've seen in some organizations, they're literally paying the coach. No, not at all. They give what they pay for.
Well, and you know, guys, we're coming up in the last few minutes of the podcast show, and I think one of the things that's come out of this conversation, that obviously something needs to change within this industry, and maybe it's the industry that needs to change to make sure that these things don't happen, to where an innocent father doesn't lose his life on a Saturday in front of his kids. Because the thing that we talked about earlier, guys, is that the guy who lost his life, his son will never forget that, and all those other kids will never forget that. So what is the message that we as parents and we who are in charge to make these tough decisions, what do we need to do to change this from happening to where there's not another parent? Now, you can disagree with the officials, okay, but when you start pulling out guns and you start fighting, it's time to change something.
For me, it starts at home. I mean, you got to fix it. You got to fix it at home with the parents and the kid before you get to the organization. And then, like Ron, you said, there should be a level when you get on the team where parents aren't involved during the games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But common sense would tell you that. But Ron, before we go, I do have a question to ask you, man. So I really appreciate you saying 75. You didn't go 100. Tell us how fast you did drive, Ron.
I'm not going to incriminate myself. I'm not going
to. Hey, Mark. Man, I'll tell you, man. You're my boy, man. You're like my little brother, man. But hey, Ranya, could you just kind of tell him just really quick what we used to do to the Alphas in college?
Whatever we wanted to. Whatever we wanted to.
Hey, this is what I always say about the Sigmas. Y'all big in Mississippi and Alabama. That's about the only place I know where they pay attention to them.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, man, Keith, man, I appreciate you getting your guys come on, man, to talk about this important topic. We're talking about parental rage and violence in youth sports. So, guys, we're going to have to definitely get you guys to come back on again.
Absolutely.
and be a part of another podcast.
Absolutely.
I think we need to have a Divine Nine podcast, man. Let's work on that, man.
Yeah.
And let's work on that, man.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm all for it.
because everybody knows the Apple's been around.
1906.
But since 1914,
Yeah.
You know the rest.
we've been running.
All right, guys.
All right,
it's been a
guys.
great podcast, man. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you again.
All right.
All right, appreciate it.